You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again. And today, just like any other day, we have a very, very special guest. We're going to talk to today Mr. Rusty Gaillard. And he is not just a former worldwide director of finance at Apple, but he's also currently today executive coach, author, and speaker. And we're going to learn more about him today. So I just want to say welcome to the show. And how you doing today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Shemaya.
And when I read about your bio, I was so fascinated to find out that you used to work at Apple, but you had a very special job. You were the former worldwide director of finance. That sounds like a big deal. And it's awesome to know that I'm an Apple fan, but even better that you had the opportunity to work with such a creative company.
It's a great company. I really enjoyed working at Apple, and it's an intense company. So it was a lot of fun, and it was challenging at the same time.
And how did you get started? Did you always want to work for Apple, or how did you get started doing that?
You know, I was working here in the San Francisco area, and I was working at PG&E, which is the utility, and they had been bankrupt and were evaluating all sorts of options to come out of bankruptcy. And then they came out of bankruptcy and went back to business as usual. And for me, it was really interesting when everything was on the table, but when they went back to business as usual, it was not such a great place to work for me. And so I started looking for other options. I had a friend working at Apple, and this was in 2005. So the iPod was the biggest device out there. The iPhone didn't exist yet. And I talked to my friend about it, and he told me about Apple and what it's like to work there. And I got really excited about working there. So I found other people I knew, I interviewed, I applied for jobs and made it in.
And after spending 13 years working at Apple, which is awesome, by the way, it sounds like, a nice success there. You decided to try something else, do something different. Tell us about that transition and what inspires you to do that.
Yeah, there were a lot of factors that went into that. I knew for a while that I wanted to change jobs. As great as Apple is, and I love working at the company, and I have a lot of respect for the people who work there, and I really like the people who work there, I knew that I wanted to do something else. The problem was I didn't know what. So I live in Silicon Valley, and I could have applied for a job at Facebook or Google or something like that. But I didn't really want to go do the same thing in another place. What I didn't know is what else I wanted to do. What else could I do? So I remember literally typing up my resume one day and then staring at it and asking myself, who will hire me? What am I qualified to do? How can I translate this experience to something else? And all the ideas that came to me were not that exciting to me. It was another version of the same thing. And I said, well, I'd rather stay at Apple because Apple's a great company. Then one day, somebody helped me to realize all of the assumptions I was making, including assuming that my resume determined what I could do, because I was looking at my past experience and assuming that defined what I could do in the future. So this person helped me break through that and say, well, your past does not have to define your future. You can do something new in the future. And just that, among other ideas like that, got me thinking, gosh, what if I could actually create the kind of career that I wanted to have and have the kind of impact I want to have. Instead of being a one person in a massive company, what if I can go work directly with people one-on-one and help them to empower themselves and accomplish what they want to in their life? And that just fired me up, and that pretty quickly went down this path of becoming a coach.
Once again, you listen to I Am Refocused Radio. We are talking to Rusty Gaillard right now. Now, when you decide to become an executive coach for small business owners and leaders, were there any bumps down the road before you actually got rolling, or was it a smooth transition?
You can't see me, but I'm laughing right now. Of course there were bumps in the road.
Well, the only reason I ask because you work for such a great company. I mean, I feel like Apple is not an easy place to get into.
It's not an easy place to get into, but I think the reality is it doesn't matter where you are or where you're starting. There's always the path forward is always going to have bumps, but the reality is there's going to be bumps even if you're not on the path forward, even if you're just trying to avoid all of that and have an easy life. There's still bumps. So the only question is, when you go over those bumps, are you going in a direction that you want to go in? So for me, I just decided I'm going to go for this. And yeah, it's going to be challenging. And I went through a divorce a few years before changing the jobs. And that was incredibly challenging for me. So it gave me the strength to know that I can get through challenging, difficult things. I can get over the bumps. And so I was willing to go for it.
And you also have a website, svdreambuilders.com. Tell us a little bit about the website and everything that flows with your business.
Yeah. So the website's svdreambuilders.com. SV stands for Silicon Valley. So it's SiliconValleyDreamBuilders.com. And it really outlines what I do as a coach, helping people to find the best of themselves and bring the best of themselves to work and to life more generally. And, it talks a little bit about my philosophy, which is that I believe that each one of us is far more capable and has more ability than we let on, than we give ourselves credit for. So it's helping people to connect with their own inner strength, with their own wisdom, with their confidence, their belief in themselves, so that they can go forward and accomplish what it is they want. And that's in their career, it's in their relationships, it's in their health, it's just in life in general. So that's I outline the services I offer in terms of coaching with people, but then hopefully that philosophy and that message comes through, just believing in anyone who's listening. Like, I believe in you and your potential.
And speaking of potential, we all are striving for more freedom and more balance within our personal lives. How do you find the actual building blocks and steps for your client to take when they're starting that new journey to find that balance and freedom?
Yeah. Well, so the first thing I encourage people to do is to change the way they talk about it. Most people say, well, I have to go to work, or I have to work late, or I have to finish this email. Instead of saying that, start by just changing your language. I choose to. Instead of saying I have to, say I choose to, because really, you don't have to go to work. You don't have to stay late. You don't have to finish the email. You can choose not to. So you have to own that you have a choice. And that is always the first step in moving forward, is to recognize you get to choose. You get to choose what you're going to do. And simply owning that choice is at least the first step towards being able to make a different choice that might serve you in a better way.
I really like that. I never really honestly heard that before. Own that you have a choice, because when you say that, it makes you think like, man, I've been dealing with this for how long, and it's, unnecessary. And now I have the opportunity to actually change the patterns, if you will. Is that something that's easier than what we think it is, or is it something that we have to learn to be consistent with?
I'm guessing based on that question, you know the answer. We got to learn to be consistent with it. I wrote a book last year. It's called Breaking the Code. And the code refers to our programming. And our programming is, not in a negative way, but we're all programmed to believe certain things based on how we grew up, our parents, our school, our friends, our loved ones. All these people influence us, and they cause us to believe things in a certain way. So if you're going to shift from thinking, I have to do these things, to I choose to do these things, that's just one example. But that is going to take some time. You got to break the code. You got to break the programming. If you habitually always thought one way, to change a habit, we all know, takes some time and energy and effort, but it's totally doable.
I love how you talked about your book, Breaking the Code, because I was just about to segue into that. So speaking of that awesome book that you've written, when it comes to technology, use that as a metaphor in regards to achieving your goals. Explain inner tech and how to upgrade and to achieve our goals.
Yeah. So I do use it as an analogy. Having worked at Apple and been around when the iPhone was launched, you think about, what is the iPhone? Well, there's the hardware. There's the physical thing you hold in your hand. Then there's the operating system, which gets upgraded periodically. And then there's apps. Well, the real reason you have the phone and you carry it around and you use it all the time is for the apps. You want to take pictures and make phone calls and use social media and Instagram and all of this. So it's really the apps that are where the value is. But in order for an app to really work and to use the full capability of the phone, it has to get permission from the operating system. I'm sure you've all installed an app that says, do you give this permission to send you notifications, to use the camera, to do all these different things? You have to give it permission. Well, think about in your own life, like you wanted to install a new app in your own life. Think about that app as a job, a new job where you're making twice as much as you're making today, right? That's a cool new app. Who wouldn't want that app, right? In your life. But most of us, when we try to install an app that says, I'm going to make twice as much money as I'm making now, our operating system, which is our programming or code, our belief system, rejects that app. It's like, no, you do not have permission because I don't think you can do it. So all of us have internally this belief system or operating system or code that governs what we think is possible for ourselves. And so part of breaking the code is to say, how do you give yourself permission to install the kind of apps you want in your life, to have the kind of results, the relationships, the job, the income, all of that, the work-life balance you mentioned earlier. How do you give yourself permission to do that? And that comes, you give yourself permission by learning how to break the code.
And I like everything you're saying because it makes you think every time you get a alert on your phone to upgrade the operating system. And if you don't do it in a certain amount of time, eventually your phone, you can't operate the new features. So that's a great metaphor because I think sometimes we outgrow our environment, and if we're not careful, we remain stuck unnecessarily in a spot where we will not reach our full potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, just like you said, your phone gives you notifications saying, hey, it's time to upgrade. Where are you getting those notifications in your life? Right? And maybe that's an inordinate amount of stress, or you're not sleeping well at night, or you're gaining weight, or, whatever these things might be, they're indications in your life that are calling for an upgrade. It's a part of your life that's not working well for you. So you got to pay attention to that. You got to open your eyes and look at it. Don't say, don't feel like a victim, oh, poor me, or don't try to avoid it, because neither of those things is going to help you change it. But look at it and say, get curious. What kind of change is this inviting you into in your life? And then are you willing to do the upgrade? Are you willing to move forward and start to make that change?
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. We are talking to the one and only Rusty Gaillard. And when it comes to leadership, when it comes to successful leaders, they all have something in common as far as certain traits, certain practices, certain routines. But what prevents most successful leaders from actually going to the next level?
I actually think what prevents most people from going to the next level is a willingness to break out of their comfort zone and do something new. Most of us, when we get good at something, that's the time when we stop learning. Right? It's like, well, I already know what I'm doing. I don't need to learn. I don't need to try a new approach because I'm already good at it. And I think that's the downfall of many leaders and many companies. You've heard about Kodak as a classic example, right? Hey, we're really good at making film. But who cares? What about digital cameras? Nah, that's not going to be a big thing. And, Kodak is gone. 50 years ago, Kodak was a huge company. That same dynamic happens with leaders who are not willing to continually learn and continually grow, which requires some courage because it's always a little uncomfortable to do something new. So it really is courage that sets leaders apart, the ones who are willing to grow and keep expanding as a person and as a leader.
If someone listening to this interview right now, they have the courage to listen right now, but they also probably have the courage and guts to say, you know what, I do want to make a change in my life. What is a small baby step that they can do right now for them to make that good shift?
Yeah, so I always start people with these questions. What does success look like? So I encourage anyone who's listening right now, they say, hey, I do feel compelled to make a change. Start with that question. What does success look like? And I'll give you what I write about in my book is what I call the zone of possibility, which is it's helpful to be in that zone of possibility when you answer that question. And there's three components. Number one is quiet. Because when you're running around busy and responding to text messages and social media and all of the stimulation you have in life, you'll never hear yourself. You'll never be able to hear your best ideas. So you need quiet. The second thing is you need to listen to your heart. because you don't think your way to an answer to this question of how do I improve my life any more than you think your way into ordering at a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you say, what do I feel like? What do I want? You need to answer your question in that way, which is more of a heart and a gut kind of answer. The third element you need is courage. We already talked about courage, but sometimes the answer that comes to you feels outside of your comfort zone. And I'll tell you, when I was working at Apple, I was 13 years in at Apple and 25 years in my corporate career. The idea of leaving the corporate world to go become a coach, working for myself, to start from scratch, it was scary. I wasn't sure it was going to work. I wasn't sure if I would be successful or a failure. So it took some courage even to listen to the idea. So find the zone of possibility, your quiet heart and courage, and answer that question. What does success look like?
And for those who are out there who say the common known thing that we all hear every now and then, I'm just so busy. I'm just so busy. It's like that's the key phrase that we like to use for something that we don't want to be committed to. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, fundamentally, we all have a choice, and you can live life by default or you can live life by design. And when you're so busy that you don't have time to think about anything new, you don't have time to do anything new, you're just repeating more and more of what you did yesterday. Like, that's okay. That's your choice. That's okay. You get to choose that. But that is for most people, that's a choice of default, which is I'm going to repeat again today what I did yesterday and repeat this week the same I did last week. And the weeks, the months, and the years go by in that way. Or you can choose to live by design. And it's your choice. You get to decide what really matters to you and what kind of life you want to create for yourself.
Once again, talking to Rusty Gaillard, and I love the fact that you're talking about design because it's so easy to not just settle for ourselves because we're used to our routines, but we also can look at other people and say, oh, I don't want to do all that they had to do to be successful. I'm just be comfortable with my little success, and I'm going to just tell everyone the same little success story, and I'm going to be fine with that. What do you think about people like that who are basically hindering themselves from growth because they are really shooting themselves down, comparing themselves to other people?
Yeah. Well, I call that as comparison despair, because anytime you start with comparison, you always end up with despair because there's always someone who's better, smarter, richer, whatever than you are. So I just think comparison despair is always a challenging place to be. But that said, there's, one of the things I heard as you were describing that is that some people are happy with their life. They're happy with the degree of success they have. They've got a comfortable life and they don't want to change anything. Great. That's totally fine. Like, I'm not here to pass judgment on anyone by any means. What is really important to me, though, is that everybody listening knows you have the capability to make a change if you want to. If you want to do it, you're 100% capable of making a change. Now, does that mean that it would be easy or your situation is friendly to you? Maybe not. It may be challenging, but do you have the capability? Absolutely.
And I love in your book, Breaking the Code, you have a belief cycle chart graphic. And I think it's pretty awesome because at the top is beliefs, and then from there is drive to thoughts and feelings, and then drive to action, and then determine results, and then reinforce. Mm-hmm. Explain that a little bit more in detail for the audience.
Yeah. So this is a great one. Thanks for bringing this up. So your beliefs about what is and is not possible is really the source of your success in life. So think about it this way. Let's just say you're making $100,000 just for the sake of argument, and you want to make $200,000, right? So we talked about this earlier. You want to put an app in making twice as much as what you're making before. Well, if you believe that's never going to happen, then what are you going to be thinking about it if you ever see a job opportunity that offers you twice as much? You're going to say, no, this is not going to happen. And that thought is going to drive your action. Your action is probably you're not going to apply. And if you did apply, you would do it kind of half-heartedly, where you wouldn't really put everything into it. Well, because you either didn't apply or you did it half-heartedly with half of your effort and half of your capability, the result you get is probably going to be not very good. You don't get it. And that not getting the job just reinforces this belief. See, I told you I wasn't qualified for this anyway. So it starts with this belief, And that drives your thinking, and that thinking drives your actions. Your actions drive your results, of course. And then the results reinforce the thought or the belief, and it becomes a cycle.
And when someone is learning more about this today, and this is probably the first time that they've been exposed to something that is really going to help them, because there's a lot of sources out there. But what I like about what you're doing is you're breaking everything down, and you use a metaphor that a lot of people can relate to. How many people have an iPhone? I mean, nothing against to any other place, but I'm just saying the way you break it down with technology is something that someone can relate to. And how important is it for someone to understand, knowing their personal identity can also help them long term?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and this is where this belief cycle comes in. This fundamentally, we never will do something we don't believe is possible for us. Right? Again, following this belief cycle, because we think it's impossible, so we never even try. So part of this process of breaking the code is breaking those beliefs. Well, gosh, what if it were possible? If this thing that I really want in my life, what if I could actually have it? And you start to get curious. And if you start to imagine that and allow yourself to go down that pathway, because most people, when they start to imagine that, they immediately pull back and they say, oh, don't even waste your time. It's just a dream. It's never going to happen. And they're reinforcing their belief. So give yourself the opportunity, give yourself the gift of exploring what it is that you really want. And going down that path a little ways. What if it were possible? What would I do? What would I be thinking about if I had that in my life? What kind of actions would I be taking if I were that person? Get curious about it. And that starts to just open the door a little bit to the possibility of what you can accomplish. So that's your identity. It's how you see yourself. It's the beliefs you hold about yourself. So you can start to shift that by allowing yourself to explore, what if that really were possible for me?
Once again, you listen to I'm Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest for today, and that is Rusty Gaillard. Visit his website, svdreambuilders.com. Get his book, Breaking the Code. But here's the $1 million question that everyone's going to want to know. What should a person do when they go to your website, number one? And when is it the right time to invest into a life coach?
Well, go to the website, read what's there, download a free copy of the first couple chapters of the book. So you can get that for free right on the website. So those are some quick and easy things to do. When is the right time to go? If there's anything in this conversation that sparks a little glimmer of curiosity for you, of like, what could my life look like? What could I accomplish if I really were open to a new level of success? If there's a glimmer of interest, if there's some curiosity, if you're inspired by this thinking of what could I really accomplish? What if I weren't constrained? If those things are interesting to you, that is the time to start talking to somebody. Because a coach can help you to get a clear picture of what success looks like for you, to get really clear on your own definition of success, and then to go out and accomplish it.
And for the individual, what kind of people should contact you? What prerequisites should they be able to have put in place before they reach and contact you?
Yeah, so the people that I work with are ready to make an investment in themselves and invest in the kind of life and success that they want to have. A lot of those people, I work with a lot of people from tech. Having spent 13 years at Apple in the tech industry, I tend to, people resonate with that who are also working in the tech industry. So a lot of my clients come from tech, but that's not a prerequisite. I really, the only prerequisites are a willingness and an interest and a readiness to invest in yourself to create the kind of results you want in your life.
And this kind of ties back to everything that we talked about today earlier in the show about your statement that you said you have to own the choice. Yeah. So once you are enabling yourself to make a decision, because indecision is still a decision, you're just not moving. Yep. And the problem is we don't understand how to get to the root problem. I don't want to create another can of worms, but real quick while we have you on, how important is it to, especially using the metaphor of technology, is finding the root problem that could be causing you to block yourself? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, I spent 13 years in therapy looking for the root problem. And to be honest, I'm not sure I ever really found it. But what I just learned along the way was when I started going for what I wanted rather than looking for the problem, that's when things really started to change faster in my life. So my work that I do with my clients, we honestly do not spend a lot of time looking for the root problem, but we spend time focusing on what does success look like? Where are you going? And then taking the steps to get there. The problems will show up. You'll find yourself not taking action or undermining yourself or whatever you do, feeling really uncomfortable with it. That's an opportunity to work with the problem, so to speak, and to overcome it. But we don't spend a lot of time looking for the problem because, problems tend to make themselves known.
Yeah, that's well said. Once again, true honor talking to Rusty Gaillard. You can go once again to his website, svdreambuilders.com. Once again, that's svdreambuilders.com. I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule talking to us, but also breaking the code. We did that. It was a slam dunk. I just want to say thank you for your expertise.
Oh, this was a great conversation. Thanks for having me, Shemaiah.
I Am Refocused Radio is brought to you by 404 Star and Holy Crab. 404 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try. You won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.